my goal was to go back to India and run my family business after my MBA. So I thought it would be cool to live in New York for 3 months. I didn't know who Gary was. I'd never heard of him before. And the rest is history. I started as an intern on Team Gary in 2015. And I now have the privilege of leading this amazing team of amazing people.
VeeFam, what's up? I am back with another episode of VeeFam Sessions. My name is Mr. Messer, but you could call me Rob, and I am extremely honored to be here with the Executive Vice President of the GaryVee brand, the head of Team GaryVee, VeeFriend, amazing human, dad, all of the above, Mr. Sid Astir. Sid, how are you? And thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm great, and it's great to finally make this happen. I know I've probably moved this a few times, but I'm excited that we're here.
Well, I'm extremely honored. I appreciate your time. It was so nice to finally meet you at Brooklyn at Chuck E. Cheese back in November, and finally introduce myself. You're and we'll get into it, but you're the man to the side. You're the man behind the scenes. So often a familiar face if you're paying attention. And it was nice to meet you, and I'm so grateful for this. So what I like to do on this is just do a quick, take a step back. So can we give us the quick, we'll call it 55-second Cliff Notes version of who you are prior to even hearing the name Gary Vee?
Cool. Let's go super early. I'm originally from India. I've lived there for 27 years of my life. I was an electrical engineer working for a German company called Siemens, and I was designing substations, transformers, capacitors, all that nerdy stuff. And somewhere through that all, I was like, I want to do my MBA from a reputed B school. And that made me leave Siemens and join my family business back home, which is in textiles. And that's where I really learned marketing, but a different kind, which is more going from an engineer. I became more of a salesperson. I selling the product and how to market it well. And I was there for 2 years. And after that, I decided to move to the US to do my MBA. And I moved to Boston at Babson. And while I was doing my MBA, my goal was to go back to India and run my family business after my MBA. So I thought it would be cool to live in New York for 3 months. So I started looking for a summer internship in New York. And luckily, VaynerMedia ended up being at Babson, and I crashed their presentation, and I was the only grad student who was there. So after a lot of persuasion, they hired me. And because I was a grad intern, everyone else was an undergrad intern, or at least that's what I assume. I was put on Gary's team. I didn't know who Gary was. I'd never heard of him before. I knew he was a CEO who was very social first, but that's all I knew about him. And the rest is history. I started as an intern on Team Gary in 2015, and I now have the privilege of leading this amazing team of amazing people that is global in all, probably around 20 different countries with 30, 35 people all over the world.
Fascinating. And I just love the common denominators of immigrant family business. And I think I in my prep for this, you were 28 when you started back in 15. Is that accurate?
Yep.
So, a lot, it's funny, and you know this more than probably anyone. A lot of these young kids think that they have to have it all figured out at 21, 22, and here you are drinking the juice, 28-year-old intern, doing it, not even, knowing the magnitude of Gary. So you get into this intern role, and what is your first impression, and maybe not first impression, when did you realize that Gary was maybe something special or a juggernaut?
There's few early examples where I can say that it was something. First one was when I just joined the team, how Gary would just treat the people around him. It felt very authentic. He wasn't trying to be very very politically correct or professional, or like he was just like hanging, and he was really the kind of CEO that everyone saw on social that he was actually in person. So like a lot of times, even through my 9 years of being on Gary's team, like people ask, is he really that the way he is on social? And my answer's always been he's exactly who he is on social, because he's just him all the time. So that was the first thing that really stood out to me. The second one was he was always very curious. Like he wanted to figure out what was happening and what was new and unique and different, and like how can we find something that no one else knows. And that was something that really attracted me. And one of the big things that Gary and I had a moment where 10 weeks in, towards the end of my internship, Gary and I had a meeting, and I still remember that meeting vividly because uh, we sat there. I went through, like, I had a bullet point of things that I wanted to talk to him about. By the time I reached number 9 or 10, he was like, let me tell you something. No one has ever impressed me more in such a short time as you have. So I want you to come and work for me full time. And that moment for me was like a big one, where I was a kid from India, and I was I was trying to just make myself feel a part of New York City at that time. It was very early. I had no idea. I was living in a different country for the first time in my life. I was very, very much trying to like figure shit out. And here's a
Mm.
top CEO in the world, really successful human. He's like, "Oh, you are really impressive." That was a big moment for me, where I was like, "All right, here's something that I need to explore. I think I'm going to regret not really going down this route and going back to my family business, because like, one, I feel like there's something here. Two, in my 10 weeks of being on the team, I'd realized that social media had the power of doing things that I could only imagine probably a year ago. Because as I explained to you, I wasn't from the social media background. Like, I'm an engineer
Mm.
and textiles, and I was doing my MBA. It had nothing to do with social media. And for me, this was a new world. And the curiosity was what drove me and attracted me at the same time. And all of this at the end of the day comes back to just Gary as a human, that I was just like, all right, I got to stay here. I got to absorb this. I got to really learn from this ecosystem. And then I just stayed.
Amazing. And I think in one of you did a Josh talk November 22. I think you were also wrestling with going back to school when you got that full-time offer. Is that true?
Yeah. So yeah, he said work with me full time. I was like, my parents and have put in a lot of time and effort and money in me being here, so I can't let that go to waste. So I have to still do a year in school. So it was the first time Gary was okay with a remote employee ever, and he said, "Cool, work from Boston, and once you're done with school, come and work with me till you figure out what you want to do after this in your life." And so I worked as an intern all of 2015 and half of 2016 from Boston. I used to come to New York once a month, get a lot of work, go back, do that while finishing school. So it was like juggling a lot of things, but I would still say it was one of the best years of my life.
That's cool, and a cool little badge of honor to be the first remote employee at Vayner. I mean, that's COVID made it really
Yeah.
of the norm, but talking 5 years prior to that, wow.
Yeah.
So you go full time in 16, uh, and you've climbed up the ladder pretty consistently to be the head of Team GaryVee. So, eh, 2016. So I'm trying to get my timeline right. So. DailyVee is a thing.
Not yet.
DailyVee's
Not
a
in 2016.
not yet.
Not
Uh,
yet. We'll still ask Gary V.
got it.
December
Yeah.
2016 is when DailyVee became a thing.
Okay. So I mean, let's. I know I spoke with D Rock last year. I know he was a big proponent of that from what he was seeing on YouTube. Talk to me about that moment in time, the origins of that, because that has been one of the flagship shows on the channel.
So actually, I might be getting that wrong. Might have been December 2015, and you're probably right that DailyVee was around now. because I still remember I was in Boston when like some of the shows, like it would show up that, oh, Sid's in New York today. So like I'm just remembering those moments, and I think I was still interning when DailyVee started. Um, I remember this moment where Casey Neistat actually stopped doing vlogging, and that
Mm.
was the day when Gary was like, "All right, let's start a vlog," and that's the day we started doing a vlog every day for Gary. And that was it. Like it was an experiment of just following him around and trying shit to it becoming a full time thing for probably 2 years for me. Like I would make sure that once the edit was done, I was manually posting it at 12:05 p.m. every day because you couldn't schedule for 12:05. You could only schedule for 12 or 12:30.
Uh-huh.
I would literally sit there at 12:04 with my phone and my timer at 12:05 and like publish, things like that.
Amazing. So, I mean, in your run, I'll just list a couple of them. I'm sure our audience is familiar, but we have, of course, DailyVee. We, the Wine Library TV, the one that started it all. Ask Gary V. More recently, Trash Talk, podcast with friends,
Overrated,
4Ds,
underrated.
overrated, underrated. So, you know, from the outside looking in, with a little couple blips of peeks behind the curtain, the whole ecosystem is grounded. And you mentioned, curiosity and experimenting. I'm curious, like how how much of an experiment is it? Or is it Gary throwing out an idea? Is it you guys pitching something to him? Like, I'll pick anyone you want, and I'd love to hear just like a quick origin story, whether it be trash talk um, or 4Ds, anything. I'd love to hear just a quick origin story from your point of view, being at the head of the table.
I think there's all of the shows that we created, except for probably overrated and underrated, which is 7 episodes of very consistent moves. Everything moved with the time availability of Gary and the way his work was evolving. So I'll give you the example of Ask Gary Vee because I built a slide around this of how everyone thinks of Ask Gary Vee as one show, but it was actually 6 different shows. So in 2014, Ask Gary Vee started as a random moment where Gary was like, "All right, I'm gonna just pick up questions from Twitter." He tweeted out saying, "Hey, I'm answering questions. Use hashtag AskGaryVee, and I'll record some questions and answer them." That was the origin of Ask Gary Vee. Cut to, we started moving in a direction where we started bringing in guests, because what started happening was now Gary was building that brand, and like instead of it being a solo show, people wanted to be on the show with him answering questions. So from a solo Twitter question show, it became Gary with a guest show. Then Gary started traveling a lot more. DailyVee came into the fold. This is probably Ask Gary V 200 or something. That's where I'm at now, where Gary couldn't pre-schedule some of these things, and like we were doing less and less of Ask Gary Vee. So there was suddenly a moment where he actually was in LA. I remember this specifically. I think it's the first call-in show or something like that. And Gary's like, "Cool, let's just call people and then surprise them, and they'll ask me a question, and I'll record it." And right after that show, he realized that he liked the back and forth with the audience and more context in the question, that actually became the Ask Gary Vee show that most of us remember right now, which is where people call in, he's on the phone, he's talking to them back and forth. But if you think about it, the first 200 episodes was just a Twitter question that he was answering with no more context. Then the next 100 episodes was this Q&A, because again, Gary could now have more context. He could also schedule them the way he wanted to do. There was a lot more going on. Then came in the guest component again. Now the guests were coming in and they were still doing the live show. So now we're in the fourth iteration of the show. And then
Mm.
suddenly, and this is some of the OG fans or the core fans would remember this, there was 1 or 2 episodes of uninterrupted by Gary Vee or interrupted by Gary Vee. I totally forget right now which one of the two we went with, but there was 2 shows or the only one of that, because there was this whole thing around just like, all right, Gary's got to ask more questions and let the guest speak more. And so Gary, as Gary is, wanted to really own that brand. So he created
Right.
one episode or two of that. And then we went away from that eventually. And now we have a hybrid version of what an Ask Gary Vee actually looks like. But it actually went through 6, 7 different iterations to actually what an Ask Gary Vee is. So if you ask me what really is the Ask Gary Vee show, it is still a Q&A show, but the way the Q&A works has really evolved over the last 7 years, 8 years of it being around.
That's fascinating. And I'm thinking in your head while you're talking about it of some of the early daily V's, the secular nature of it, because he has content recording the audio for the Ask Gary V book. So it's fascinating how everything's just recycled and intertwined. But Daily V, I think, is one of the most underrated pieces of content ever put out there, and I think it's still underappreciated. Just looking back, at some of the older episodes, the view count, but and he says this very, he's very forthright about this, about how people were very misunderstood about how his day actually he actually did for a living until Daily V came out. So very fascinating. Just a quick thought, like on the origin of, or the life cycle of that. I know they're still putting them out, not as frequently as as 8 years ago, but just a quick couple thoughts on that show.
So Daily V started off as the first version of Daily V was, if you go to YouTube and you find Day in the Life of Gary Vaynerchuk, that was like the first experiment of like being able to document a day of Gary. That's like Daily V 000 almost. It wasn't even the first Daily V. It was like Day in the Life of Gary Vaynerchuk. Then obviously we went into vlog sessions, and like there were days where we would film today and then edit them overnight to be released tomorrow. And then through 2016, we had this really obsessive um, um, uh, goal of producing a daily V every day. So if you see, there are days when Gary's literally recorded a daily V saying, "I was too busy today, I couldn't do much, but here's today's daily V," and
Mm.
that was the daily V. And there was the goal at that time became we need to vlog every day and put something out every day. To 2017, 18, it started being more just like, let's document every day, but release the interesting days and try to storytell around that. And as Gary got busier running Vayner Media and VaynerX, like all these entities inside VaynerX, what started happening was there were less and less things that we could actually show the world. Most of the things he was doing in a day was operating the business, having difficult conversations around finance and people and business decisions and clients and things like that. We cannot show those. And this is one of the conversations I have with Gary the most is some of the best things he does every day are not things that we can put out on the internet.
Mm.
When he's navigating different kinds of fires that are happening at the company, we cannot share those things publicly. And that's where he's actually the best operator. And no one sees that because we cannot show that side of him. So yes, when he'll have a story, he'll share it, but we're documenting that. It's still in the archives. It's there in the do not use folder that no one's gonna have access to, but it's still there, but we can't release it. So that was the evolution of where we started seeing that he was starting to get busier and busier, and there was less and less we could do with a lot of his days. Then the evolution obviously went into he got so busy that we had to move to weekly V because we were getting so less content from him that we could only make enough content for like a week's worth in one episode. And
Mm.
now we're once we started doing weekly V, we obviously COVID happened and we moved to Tea with Gary V, and that completely changed the narrative. And yes, we've brought back Daily V since VeeCon happened, and like 2021 we started doing Daily V again, and it's been there. But this is like really very very I would say very fresh right now. We are really having a conversation about how to showcase Gary's life and maybe go more into a weekly vlog rather than trying to show you days randomly, sporadically throughout his
Hmm.
life. and try to do more of like, here's what happened last week. But again, we haven't nailed down the concept. It's still early, but we understand that he's getting busier and busier, and we need to maximize the access we can give to the audience and to his fans and friends on what's happening in his life. That's why the Twitch stream is huge right now.
I was going to say that feels like I don't have the metrics like you guys do, but just watching from the sideline, it feels like that's picking up steam where people want to just have it on in the background. You know, you have your old content playing, and just seeing it, you have that level of connection. Fascinating, and it's blows my mind to think that the content level is so high, yet there's just probably hours and hours and hours of do not use footage that would just eclipse that.
Yeah, the amount of content that we have stored that's not released is definitely higher than what's out there.
Amazing. So in the, we'll call it Tea with Gary V era, during COVID, he gets a sniff of what's going on in Web3, NFTs. He's talking to everyone in that space and ends up releasing something called VeeFriends. I would love for you to take a step back to that moment when you heard that this was happening, whether or not you knew it was called VeeFriends, but talk to me about the first time you heard that this was happening and that this was going to be given a lot of attention in the Gary Vaynerchuk world.
So VeeFriends, and I'm sure people have spoken about this with you already because this is not a not known story anymore, but VeeFriends was supposed to be called Workplace Pals. And it was supposed to be a physical desk toy. It was the whole ethos and everything was the same, but because NFTs and Web3 wasn't really mainstream or people were not even aware of it, we were still thinking about e-commerce and how to like really get it made and get it in front of the most people and spread positivity and like get people to actually stop hating their jobs and like, where are you the most stressed and things like that. So Workplace Pals was the original name for VeeFriends, and it was supposed to be an e-commerce brand. Obviously, with Web3 and everything, we went with VeeFriends, and it moved in the direction of NFTs, and again, the whole access. I think a big part of Gary's brand over the years has been access to his fans. He has built everything on access. He has made sure that whatever time he has, it's actually documented in a 2017 Ask Me Anything, where Gary asks people in the room, and I was in the room. He was like, "What do you think is the biggest problem you have with me?" Or something like he said something like, what's the biggest thing that you hate about me, or something like that. And I was like, I hate the fact that I, being on your team, cannot get 5 minutes with you, but if you have 5 minutes, you'll just start FaceTiming random fans, or like you'll give away your 5 minutes like that to your community, but me on your team have to like struggle to get 5 minutes with you. And he was like, that's so true. And that's where like he went into like how he's always pulling from opposite directions of like he'll always go macro with these things, and building and developing the community and giving them value is always the first thing in his mind. So Web3 gave him the opportunity to actually unlock that. So it was just amazing to see the creative side of Gary. I was always aware of it because of just being so close to him for so long. But like that was really when he went into his creation mode of like drawing. Like I didn't know he knew how to draw that well. It's pretty good. Some of that stuff is pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really fun to see how Gary was actually all in on something after a very long time. Probably the last time I'd seen him do that was with TikTok, and a little before that was with Snapchat. So it was like fun to just see how he could actually build an IP around his brand. And if you see some of the 2017-18 DailyVees, you'll see that Gary would always say that I wish there was a way for me to bring characters into DailyVee. Like there's a and I think he's mentioned once like a Gary B just like floating around over here, or just like another like a snake talking to me, and like he's come up with those things 4 years before he actually executed on that. So he's always been planning for something like that, but that gave him the tool to actually be able to execute on that, I guess.
Yeah, and that makes me think of when you guys experimented with Lil V. I don't know how many episodes it lasted, but the
But,
animated one. Oh,
but it was one.
I knew how to.
It took over a year to make. It was one episode on YouTube, and yeah, it was a team of three people who actually made that happen, and we also had a voiceover artist that worked with us.
So obviously the community is there. You guys, VeeFriends knocked it out of the park, educating in a space that was next to impossible to educate on, to go from 0 to 60. Get a wallet and get ETH, and now ETH is going up, and like, what do we do about that? We could do hours just on that education, but the big value add at the end of the day, if you didn't understand it, VeeFriends NFT was a ticket to 3 years of this conference. VeeCon won May 2022 in Minnesota, and it's funny. You had looked familiar because just from random daily V's that you popped in. I thought waiting in line like you were like Gary's bodyguard, but you're there, standing next to him for hours. The community's there. What are you thinking on that field when it's just we go from afternoon to night, and you're probably used to him being mobbed, but I feel like that may have been different from everyone's perspective. So your thoughts on VCon 1, specifically just feeling the energy and seeing the people.
This is fun, actually. You just made me relive that whole experience. So, like, I'll summarize it. Throughout the 3 days, everyone on the team was very nervous because it was the first time we were throwing something like that. We were just like everything that was happening, we were just like very cautious. Like while everything was going great, there's always this like everyone was just like always like on the edge. Like we knew that this was a very important event, and everything had to be perfect. And there was a lot of time and effort and people involved, and like everyone was doing a phenomenal job of doing it, and bringing it to life. And but at the same time, this was like the way that I think Gary said it, or maybe I just made this up, so I can't even confirm that. But Gary was hosting the party, right? So it had to be, there was a responsibility, and we just walked around with that. But I specifically remember standing in the selfie station line, and I was like, "Wow, this is a lot of people." So throughout my 3.5, 4 days, whatever, of the selfie line, because the first day was outdoors, and then after that, indoors 3 days, I kept asking every human, was this the first time you're meeting Gary? And you won't believe that 95% of the people that I met that day in the selfie line said it was the first time they were meeting Gary. And that was such an epic moment for me, because it was like we really created something where people could have access to Gary. And they wanted that, and they were waiting online for hours and hours to just say hi to that human that has created all of this. And I still remember the final keynote where Gary was on stage and he was closing out VeeCon, and that was the first moment that it struck me that wow, this was really a different world that we lived in for 3.5 days. Everyone was so kind with each other. Everyone just being positive and like supporting each other, and like everyone's hanging with each other. Just like there was so much positivity at VeeCon that I actually teared up in the background. Like I started crying because I was like, wow, this is so fulfilling as a responsibility, that what Team Gary is doing and bringing to the world is just so much good that it just doesn't feel like making Instagram videos and TikTok videos and YouTube videos. It's actually making impact. And that was the first moment where I actually got overwhelmed with emotion, because I was like, this is different. People would want to do this once in their life, and we get to do it every day. And this is just special. And that was really fulfilling.
I appreciate you sharing that. It had definitely had VCon was amazing. we could talk forever about it. But that keynote, I think, and I documented this because I had a great seat right there, and there's something special about that keynote. I can't totally articulate it yet, but every now and then I watch it back, and it's almost historic. Might be not quite the word I'm looking for, but it definitely plants the flag in the sand of what this is, what especially what this community is, and and obviously what you guys are putting out there is a huge proponent of that. And you also, I have to say this because I saw you posted an amazing picture, and it's you probably putting a phone in Gary's face, and the 9 seconds you have of his time to approve a video, and you guys are working. It's go go go, and I think in the Instagram post you said you were putting up pieces of content from video to post. It was 3 hours or less, which
Yeah.
is unbelievable. While we're at it, I should have asked this before, but just ballpark, how many pieces of content is Team Gary putting out in a given week?
Um, it's difficult to say because it keeps changing every week, every month, every few months. I'll give you a couple of numbers here or there just to like give you ballparks, but like I can't say what we did last week, but last year when I calculated, we were doing something for like a team offsite. We produced over 900 pieces of content for Gary in a month, not in English. So that was other languages. That was 900 pieces in a month. So I would almost triple that, and probably that's the number. But again, I can't give you that number if I want to give. We did check probably mid 2023, a couple of weeks, and the average number per week was around 360. So that number keeps changing. That's why I'm saying, like, for us, everything is a piece of content. So you can
Mm.
everything from a tweet to an image post to a story to a TikTok to a YouTube video to a YouTube community post to a Facebook a Facebook image post or a template on LinkedIn. Everything is a post for us. On average, on Facebook, LinkedIn, and some of these platforms, we're posting 10 times a day. So right there, you can just see like that's 70, 80 posts just on a platform. I would say that that number is probably 300, 400 is the right number per week, but that doesn't include the global stuff that he does in Spanish and Portuguese, in Chinese and Hindi, in French and all of the other languages. Like we've got a whole uh, team that does his content not in English. So that's probably one of the lesser known parts of Team Gary for sure.
But not surprising at all. It's so tough. It's a challenge to chat with someone like yourself. You're saying how much you're putting out. There's so much. There's so many layers, so many years, so many experiences. But something that I try to think about. What has been overlooked, and just thinking about all the new people that are getting into VeeFriends in this community now. I have to go back to 2021. You had a front row seat for one of the greatest executions of a book sale of all time. Gary, I think it's August 2021. Gary goes on this QVC just bender on all of his socials.
Yep.
He sells an ungodly number of books, a million, I think, plus. Talk to me about that experience for you. How long did you plan it? How much was you guys versus him? I'd love to hear your perspective on that book games execution. I'm
There's,
sorry, I'm calling it book games. 12 and a half book
yeah,
execution.
12 and a half book games. I get it. There's a lot of different layers to that. I would say we were underprepared for what Gary was going to throw at us. We were not ready for it. We just knew that Gary wanted people to buy books and send us receipts. And with our limited knowledge of what was about to come our way, we had prepped a system where we felt really confident about what was going to happen. Uh, as we were as we were getting ready for the live that happened, I think it was August 28th, but I could be wrong about this exact date. Gary, in the last 5 or 10 minutes, like really nailed down what he really wanted. So we frantically in the back end changed like the form the way we wanted, everything done. We didn't have time to think through what were going to be the issues. If I were doing it today, I probably would do it a little differently. But at the same time, we were all always have been very good at like reacting and being nimble on our feet with like what's happening and adjusting to that. So we got the form ready and submissions started coming in, and we suddenly realized that this was way bigger than we thought it would be. We my subjective intuition was we were gonna sell somewhere around, if I'm remembering correctly, I had guessed 10,000 books, and we had a moonshot number of 50,000. Not we, I had that number. I thought 50,000 would be amazing. When we I think when we started selling, we had sold over 100,000 in the first hour itself, and that's when we knew that we were not equipped to actually run this, and we knew we
It's
had
okay to
to.
laugh about it now, right?
Yeah, it was a complicated year and a half to like get it all done afterwards, with like checking the receipts and making sure that everyone got their book games and that their wallets and like all that, because again, the tech was new, everyone was learning, we were on a new chain, all that. There was all of those things, and then there were retailers, the Amazon and the Barnes and Nobles, like they had their own versions of what they were expecting from us and stuff like that. So in hindsight, we would have done it a little differently. Not sure how, but I can say that the way we did it was not expecting as much traffic as had happened at that time. But at the end of the day, we did make sure that we gave everyone enough window at the end of the day to claim what they deserved. We checked as much as we could with receipts because we had good partners that were helping us. A lot of people on the team put in a lot of time and effort into getting it right. I cannot emphasize enough of how much time and effort and work and actual good intent went into making book games a success. And there was close to 20, 25 people working in the back end to just make it happen and get it right. And everyone was just, the only thing that we were focused on was that if anyone deserved it and should get it, they receive it, and that was the only focus from our end. And we were trying to like, we worked through the new year at that time to make sure that we got through the deadline for the claim and everything. And again, there were like versions of people actually reaching out to us in different ways and us helping them through. We really became a side business within VeeFriends to do the
Mm.
book games, but it was all based on good intent. And I think I want to give a lot of credit to the whole team, because I know sometimes it's not seen by the outside world, but everyone on the team like really worked with the right intent to like get it right. And I think sitting inside here that everyone did the best they could, and it was a success.
Yeah, I mean, I can't even imagine. I mean, we talked about at the top, like educating people on a regular wallet.
Yeah.
Now to build out this layer two to educate people on that, I mean, hats off to you guys. I know we just have a couple minutes. Real quick, last segment. But before that, I just want to thank you for your time. Incredibly busy. I can't even imagine being at the helm of someone who's arguably the most documented person out there. Probably when it's all said and done, will be. And it probably won't even be close. So thank you for your time. And you're it's very clear to me when I started doing this how the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. The kindness just streaks through everything. So I can't thank you enough, Sid. If
Thank you
you
for
have a
having me.
couple minutes, um, I call it micro macro Spitfire. So I'm going to fire off a lot of quick ones. You can
Yeah.
give me a short macro answer, or
Okay.
get your microscope out and explain why.
Okay.
Um, and I saw your PFP, but I don't know. I don't want to put words in your mouth. Favorite VeeFriend character?
Oh, it's the tough to beat the worm from the dirt because I own it, and I really resonate with it because I do feel that at 28 I really became back into the dirt to like learn this skill, and whatever I am today is because I restarted at 28. Even though I didn't need to restart at 28, it was just my curiosity that made me want to do it, and I'm really grateful for that.
Favorite teacher you had growing up, and one reason why?
It was my uh, uh, grade two teacher. She was her name was Mrs. Singh, and simply because she was just kind. I think it was just the kindness. Like she was always very very kind to everyone around her.
If it became illegal or impossible to have more than one social media account, which one would you advocate for Gary to stay on and keep?
For Gary, Twitter for sure. He loves it. It's the one that he's himself. He's really he loves being on Twitter. It's
And
his
what
deep.
about what about for you?
Uh, for me, I don't think I care about any social platform. I would rather have a podcast where I can have conversations like these.
I love that. A secret talent that you have that most people don't know.
Uh, I think I'm very intuitive, and people that work with me understand how much that is a secret weapon for me.
Mm. Which VeeFriends character do you need to spend more time with? Meaning, by osmosis, you need more of that trait.
I think the first one that came to mind was Fearless Fairy for sure. Just like being fearless in life. I would say that
Wine, beer, or coffee?
beer,
I got a little whiff in one of your posts that you were a tennis guy. So Djokovic, Nadal, Federer.
Federer all the way.
Love it. Favorite concert you've ever been to?
It was the Coldplay. It was my first ever concert. It was a Coldplay concert. Just the way that they actually create the atmosphere with the LEDs and everything was just epic.
Gratitude Gorilla or Patient Panda?
Gratitude Gorilla, because I feel patience starts with being grateful for what you have.
The your favorite piece of physical either VeeFriends memorabilia or GaryVee memorabilia? Favorite physical artifact?
Uh, I, I have two things that come to mind. Number one, I have the first Gary V 001 signed by Gary, and I wore it on the day that he signed it, and I've never worn it again. That is definitely one of those things that I hold close to my heart. And then the other is Gary did a white label wine once called Competitor, and he did a signing at Wine Library once, and I got both the Chardonnay and the I think it was the Pinot Noir, like both versions of it signed by him, and I still have those bottles with me.
That's cool. I've never heard of that. Um, you've been there so much. You've heard so much. Gary always says, you know, one of his taglines is, "If I could get one person in the audience to act, or one person to make action." I'm curious. You've consumed so much. Is there anything that he ever said, even if you've heard it a trillion times, that it just clicked differently for you in that moment?
He said it today, which was fun. He was like, "People want millions, but they also want to be chill. Like, go live a chill life. Don't chase the millions because that's a good life. Or if you're chasing the millions, then don't chase the chill because that's also not going to make you happy." And I think it really happened today on the Twitch stream. And I think that was a good moment. But so that's like today. But one of the things that always stood with me and my favorite things from Gary has always been winners win. If you're a winner, you want to win, you'll find a way to win, and whatever winning means to you is yours. But if you want to win, you'll win. You won't be making excuses. you won't find reasons why you couldn't, and you'll find ways to do it and they'll make it happen. So winners win is a big one for me.
I love that. Sid, I can't say it enough. Thank you. I'm so grateful for your time, guys. And I'll link up all of his stuff. Give him a follow. Say hello at VeeCon. All of the above. Appreciate for all that you guys do, all the hard work to make this content that we love and that inspires us and that entertains us, and educates us. So really appreciate you coming on the pod.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
See you at VeeCon.
Oh, well.